Afternoon and welcome to St. Peter's in Hove. I'm Father Alexander, and today I want to go on our 254th step in our walking tour through the Bible, and I want to talk about Isaiah 58. Now, this is one that comes up rather frequently in the lectionary. Yeah, I feel it's been a bit neglected because the prophet is speaking, and the prophet is saying, "Shout for all you are worth," or maybe God is speaking to the prophet here. "Shout for all you are worth, do not hold back, raise your voice like a trumpet. To my people proclaim their rebellious acts, to the house of Jacob their sins. They seek me day after day, they long to know my ways, like a nation that has acted with intent uprightly, and has not forsaken the law of its God. They ask me for laws that are upright, they long to be near God. Why have we fasted if you do not see? Why mortify ourselves if you never notice? Look, you seek your own pleasures on your feast days, and you exploit all your workmen," and so on. So, what God is telling the prophet to do is to confront the people of Judah with their sins. Ooh, tricky. No priest, well, I speak for myself, wants to confront people with their sins because one is always frightened of the reaction one will get. So, what one tends to do is instead of saying, "You're all adulterers," for example, one says, "Isn't it wonderful when husband and wife live together in perfect harmony and in mutual fidelity?" So, instead of going for the negative, you go for the positive. Say, for example, instead of condemning people who waste time on the internet all day long, you say something like, "Isn't it great when we use the time that God has given us for doing really good things? And don't we get a great satisfaction out of helping other people and so on, when we could have been slumped in front of the television or in the computer instead?" So that's what we tend to do, how we tend to get away from it. That's very much, incidentally, I'm not criticizing that, that's very much the approach of St. John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI to reinforce the good, and by doing so, thus draw people's attention to what is negative. Now, the prophet is meant to be, and the church is meant to be, strongly countercultural. If people are in sin, we are to tell them that they are in sin. I mean, it's inescapable. And yet some people say, "Oh no, the church is far too focused on sin. Oh, the church is so negative. Oh, the church wants to make people feel guilty." And you're right, the church wants to make people feel guilty because if they are doing wrong, they need to feel guilty, so then they will stop. Guilt is not necessarily a bad thing. So, for example, if you are doing something wrong and then guilt kicks in, then you'll stop doing it and you won't go on to something even more wrong. And as for those people who feel no guilt at all, they are monsters. The people, for example, who commit murder and commit mass murder, the people who are professional thieves and so on, people who have justified their behavior, have justified their wrongdoing and see their wrongdoing as right, or they're entitled to do it, they're monsters. The sense of entitlement to do wrong is a monstrous sense. And unfortunately, we live in a land of monsters because there are quite a lot of people who not only refuse to listen to the voice of the church on moral matters, but say that the church should shut up and the church should not speak at all on moral matters. Hence, for example, any priest who takes a pro-life stance, or anybody who takes, any layperson who takes a pro-life stance, is not only seen as wrong and offensive, but also seen as somebody who must be silenced. And we've just had a case here in the United Kingdom where a layperson and a priest have been arrested or harassed by the police for praying outside abortion clinics. All they were doing was praying. They weren't saying anything, but no, even that is too much. And you can see, therefore, there you see very clearly that those who wish to silence the church are not saying the church shouldn't interfere in things that have nothing to do with the church's business, but what they're trying to do is to stymie and impede the church's mission. They're saying, we're not interested in the mission of the church. In other words, they're trying to destroy the church. They're saying the church should, to be allowed to carry on in a secular society, the church should stop being the church. That's what they actually want. Okay, now, so what is the prophet actually complaining about here? What is he to proclaim to the people of Israel? What are the sins? Well, exploiting your workmen, that's a sin. And also, your fasting, all you do is quarrel and squabble and strike viciously with your fist. It's not quite clear how fasting leads to quarreling and fisticuffs, but there it is. Fasting like yours today, he goes on to say, will never make your voice heard on high. Is that the sort of fast that pleases me? A day when a person inflicts pain on himself, hanging your head like a reed, spreading out sackcloth and ashes? Is that what you call fasting, a day acceptable to the Lord? It is not this sort of fast that pleases me. In other words, your fast is hypocritical. You're going without food, perhaps, but you're not actually changing anything. You're not actually taking a moral stance. You are paying lip service. And again, this was a theme that we've heard earlier in Isaiah. This people honors me only with their lips. So what have you got to do? Carry on with the fasting by all means, but do something as well. And this is, and here he talks about to break unjust fetters, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break all yokes, to share your food with the hungry, to shelter the homeless poor. If you see someone lacking clothes, to clothe him, and not to turn away from your own kin. In other words, what we need from you, people of Israel, and indeed people of the church, we need acts of charity. And this is very similar to the corporal works of mercy, setting slaves and prisoners free, the unjustly imprisoned free, breaking the yoke, liberating people from drudgery, liberating people from oppression, sharing your food with the hungry, clothing the naked, and so on. And if you do that, then your light will blaze out like the dawn. In other words, then you will be a moral person. But the actual fasting, which is just, and you're always quarreling with other people, that's not good enough, is what God is saying. So he's saying, in fact, your liturgical observances are no good, they're inadequate, because they're unaccompanied by a moral renaissance, by a moral duty towards other people. You can pray all you like, you can go to church all you like, but if you're not going to live in charity with your neighbour, your prayer and your going to church is worthless, is what it's saying. Now, that is quite devastating, isn't it? So, for example, if you go to church and you do all the right things, and yet you do not fulfill the moral law, then your going to church is worthless. So, and then he goes on, he talks about the clenched fist, the malicious words. If you deprive yourself for the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, your light will shine in the darkness, and so on. So do away with the clenched fist and the malicious words. The clenched fist, I suppose, is this. In other words, the way you bully other people, the way you force other people to do what you like, using your physical power, the abuse of power. But it could be also, the French is when you really do this, it's like grinding your teeth. It's the anger you have within you and the malicious words. And then, of course, the prophet talks about the rebuilding of Jerusalem, the restoration of the people. Okay, they're back in Jerusalem after the exile. They're trying to rebuild their city. But the real renaissance they need is a moral renaissance. Then, if you do all these things, your ancient ruins will be rebuilt. You will build on age-old foundations. You'll be called breach mender, restorer of streets to be lived in, restorer of ruined houses. In other words, if you want to get on as a society, there's got to be a moral renaissance. There's got to be a moral reformation. If you refrain from breaking the Sabbath, from taking your own pleasure on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath delightful and the day sacred to the Lord honourable, If you honour it by abstaining from travel, from seeking your own pleasure and too much talk, then you will find true happiness in the Lord, and I shall lead you in triumph over the heights of the land. I shall feed you on the heritage of your father Jacob, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. We will never prosper until we become moral people. It's simple, isn't it? So I think Lent is coming up, but at just any time of year, we need to renew ourselves morally. And we start with ourselves, obviously, but the church needs to proclaim morality to a world gone badly astray. All the best. Bye.